overall goal is to really expose you to a different form of learning and training in the online format, and to become more familiar with online webinars and to actually consider using them as trainers. Now, the Florida Literacy Coalition has a wonderful Train the Tutor Trainer course online, and proliteracy.org is coming out with a wonderful new training online component. I believe they said mid-June, so it may be right after our session 3 that you'll be able to access that, and that'll be available as an additional training tool for you. So today's 4 main objectives is we're going to discuss and understand the purpose of evaluation. We're going to explore some best practices of evaluation. We will review the participant presentation assignments and answer any questions that you may have. So why should we evaluate our training workshops? Well, to gather and to use feedback, and we should always be continuously wanting to improve and refine our curriculum and to improve and refine our trainer skills. So what do you think is the most common form of formal assessment? Do you think it's, okay, I'll go ahead and tell you. It is multiple choice. It is a multiple choice questionnaire. That is the most common form of formal assessment. So let's talk a little bit more about our workshop evaluations. And many of you may have heard of Donald Kirkpatrick and his 4 levels of evaluation. But if you haven't, I'll tell you a little bit about him. So Donald Kirkpatrick, he was a professor at the University of Wisconsin. He was also a past president of the American Society for Training and Development, which they use the acronym ASTD, which, by the way, is a very interesting organization, and they have a lot of great free information on their website, ASTD. He first published his model, the 4-level training evaluation model, back in 1959 in a training and developmental journal. And he is considered like the go-to person when it comes to workshop evaluations and how to go about doing that in a scientific methodology. He actually has given us a foundation to scientifically evaluate our trainings. So the 4 basic questions, we're going to be looking at them more in depth. Kirkpatrick says we look at reaction, learning, behavior, and results. So for reaction, you should ask yourself, does my learning design function well? Does my learning design function well? For learning, you should ask yourself, are the learners actually learning the right things? Are the learners actually learning the right things? And in our case, many times those learners are our tutors that we're imparting the skills to so that they can impart those to the learners. Regarding behavior, the 3rd area, we should ask yourself, can the learners actually do the right things? Can the learners actually do the right things? And regarding results, you should ask yourself, are the learners actually doing the right things when they go back into the real world? So are they doing the right things when they go back into the real world? And we're going to discuss some tools and techniques for evaluations. Are there any questions so far? Okay. So let's look at this a little bit more in depth. Question number 1, are the participants enjoying the training? Kirkpatrick asks, to what degree are the participants reacting favorable to the training? Okay, a lot of times as trainers, we should be gauging our learners, whether they're tutors or actual learners. We should be gauging them and checking in with them, getting their response, encouraging suggestions, and gauging them to see if they're engaged or are they bored. And enjoyable means engaging, which leads to effectiveness. Okay? You know, checking in with them. Are the participants' needs being met? And always try to get the participants to give you input on ideas for improvement. And a lot of times you won't actually get this during your actual workshop. A lot of times you will get this information from people during break times or at lunchtime, coming back from lunch, you know, early. Sometimes it's more the informal times where participants will be honest with you. Okay, so as trainers, we should use tools to find the answers. So, you know, the survey is usually popular. I mentioned before, the multiple choice survey is probably #1 evaluation tool out there. You know, are you using paper? Are you using an online survey? Surveys can be a great tool to find out how your trainings are going. You know, be sure to allow the participants enough time to actually complete the surveys. One thing that I happened to notice that was great on Carla and Ed's survey that they sent me earlier today was that they did have it on the front sheet, the bottom of the front sheet, like turnover, that there's more questions on the back, which makes sense because we've been in that situation where they didn't realize that there's additional questions on the back, even though we said it and we announced it. So that was a nice little tip out there. You should allow participants to remain anonymous on their surveys. And I really think this one's important, that you should not allow the surveys to go home with the people, because most likely you will not get them returned. That's just the experience that I've had. You should always have an equal number of survey questions pertaining to both positives and negatives, or strengths and weaknesses on the survey. ProLiteracy actually recommends a mini survey after teaching each module. I thought that was an awesome concept. So, you know how we were talking a little bit about how ProLiteracy wants you to do the modules, like let's say, for example, you do one on reading comprehension, or you do one on learning difficulties, or you do a separate module on lesson plans. ProLiteracy recommends that you do a mini evaluation after each session. And at that point, I'm saying no more than 4 questions, and we're going to talk a little bit about that a little later. So that's an interesting concept that ProLiteracy came out with. Oh, actually, I'll mention it now. There's one particular book that is on your recommended reading list in your notebook. It's called Design for How People Learn, and the author is Dirksen, like D-I-R-K-S-E-N. They actually talk about survey design, and their recommendation is no more than 4 questions. So I thought that was interesting. And that would go along great with the pro-literacy idea of surveying each separate module. I think most importantly, you should allow participants space to write their own response to what worked and what didn't. So while those, questions of, on the Likert scale, from strongly agree to strongly disagree, whenever you have those different scales, they call that a Likert scale. And if you have three options, it would be a 3-point Likert scale. And if you have 5 options, it would be a 5-point Likert scale. I think it's important that you still allow participants to be able to write in their own responses. You're going to get some awesome feedback there. I know that's how I found out about the quote-unquote rainbow-colored handouts. That participants have loved that we give out the rainbow-colored handouts and not just white handouts, especially when you're going through a folder of materials. You can say, okay, let's all refer to the pale pink paper, or this happens to be a pale green paper. It makes it a little bit easier for the participants to follow along. So also, when you're during your training, have some open-ended questions. Like the most interesting thing I learned today was blank, and let them fill in the blank. Provide statements to choose from. I can't wait to start, or I don't think I can do this. One of the things that we do on our survey, and I did email you one of our Citrus Libraries survey out, is after we actually collect the surveys, April and I figure out percentage-wise how many people feel ready to teach, how many people feel that the training was a valuable investment of their time, okay? And you can see some of the questions. We literally go in there and we figure out with an online percent calculator, there's lots of online percent tools and calculators out there. We literally put in how many people filled out the survey and how many people answered yes to this. And then we are able to come up with a nice little percentage to see how we're doing. Okay, let's take a look at question number 2. Are the participants learning anything? Has the knowledge increased? Has the skill in performing a task improved? Has attitude changed? And sometimes the attitude can be confidence. A lot of times in my experience, after we do that lesson plan exercise, the one that we did in session 1, I will see the participants, the tutor participants, that their confidence has greatly increased and that their attitude has changed after we do that activity, where they believe that they can do this. They believe they can be tutors in our literacy program. So that's what you want to see. You want to see if the knowledge, skill, or attitude has changed. So before a tutor training workshop, especially if it's one that you're doing for your literacy organization, you want to talk with the prospective tutors before the training to get a feel of their background knowledge, their personality, their beliefs. A lot of times, if they're inflexible already before they even come to a training, like they don't want to drive to a location for the training, it's just good information to gather beforehand. And then during the actual training, the observation of the prospective tutors during the actual training is important. You can look at their body language, you can look at their level of engagement. A lot of times you can just hear the questions that they're asking. We talked a little bit about this in session 1. but if there's a lot of negativity there, this will give you this is good. This is why I actually prefer, even if you do use an online training module, I think it's still good practice to meet with the people in person and to be able to form that bond and to be able to gauge the interest level of the tutors. Also, during your tutor training workshop, have quick on-the-spot evaluations. How are we doing? Does this make sense? Is this what you expected? Those are called on-the-spot evaluations. After the actual training, is the tutor actually tutoring? Is the tutor using strategies that were taught in the training? Okay. We talked a little bit about having clear learning objectives in our tutor trainings. And, one of the things that I tend to struggle with as a trainer is, is there enough content or is there too much? I think especially with new tutors, you can overwhelm them. We do a 2 full-day new tutor training workshop, and we try not to get into too much assessment and too much specialized things like learning difficulties. We touch upon it, but we don't delve into it deeply. That's what our tutor enrichment workshops or our quarterly workshops are for, to expand upon those topics. Because sometimes tutors will say, you know what, this is more than I had signed up for. This is a little bit more complicated than I thought. And, sometimes we need to maybe scale back the content. And I know myself, I tend to want to teach just one more thing. So as trainers, we just have to be aware of that. I think also we should always be evaluating and revamping and reviewing our actual materials, our slide presentations, our handouts, our activities. That's just a common practice that educators do. I think it's a good best practice to follow. So I've given a lot of information so far. Is this a good moment to ask if there's any questions?
I see a question here.
Okay.
Someone wants to know if they can get a copy of Carla and Ed's survey.
I would love to share that if that's okay with Carla and Ed.
That's the only question we have so far.
Okay. Okay, so let's take a look. We talked about goals, having clear workshop goals, and getting participant feedback, asking, is this what you expected? One of the things that I like to do is after teaching a concept, I like to ask, can you see yourself using this strategy? I know I want to say I pretty much have never seen anybody say no. I usually see a lot of people engaged and nodding their heads and saying, yes, I would actually use this strategy. Whether it's from the learning styles inventory, whether it's the language experience approach, whether it's asking open-ended reading comprehension questions. Those are some of the things that I would ask this question after. And I will almost always see the head nodding and the tutors affirming that they would use this strategy. And one thing that's not a bad idea is to ask the participants to actually develop some kind of an action plan that they're going to use in their tutoring. from the tools that you've given them. Some of the other ways that we can see if learning has taken place, are the pre-tests and the post-tests. And some of them can be really simple checklists. I know there's quite a few of you that are interested in English language learning. And I think I'll bring a couple of real simple assessments to the session 3 class, because I know that was one of the hot topics that was coming up. So I'll probably bring and share a few of those. Some of the ones from English Forward, it is something that you actually have to subscribe to, but it's really reasonable. English Forward is about $25 to join, and I have a membership. But I'll give you an example. For an English language learner, one of the assessment tools is, the learner can state his address. The learner knows what county and state the learner lives in. I mean, it's really simple assessment questions, and if they can do those things, then they've shown marked improvement and marked gains. Some of the other ways are role plays. We talked a little bit about role plays and scenarios and simulations. Okay, let's see, my slide is freezing up just a little bit. Let's see. Okay, I was trying to switch my slide, but it looks like it's frozen, so I might need to go back out and in again.
Yeah, I think you'll just have to do that. That's probably going to be the best.
Just bear with. Okay, thank you. Just bear with me for a minute, everybody. Okay, there we go. We're back on track. Okay, so question number 3. Are the participants applying what they learned? Well, isn't that the trainer's $1 million question? Yes, it is. Are the tutors applying what they learned when they are tutoring? Allow time, give the tutor the time to use the skills they learned. I think it's really important for us to remember that some tutors may not actually use something they learned at a workshop until 6 months later, because their situation or their learner didn't require it of them. So we have to allow time to observe, and we can actually start the observation in class, but then also the observation should continue in the real world and see how they are working with their actual learner. We should evaluate on a regular basis. We should always be evaluating. Beginner tutors will often provide better feedback on trainings after they become expert tutors. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And that is definitely a learning principle out there. Ask everyone involved and do random, more detailed evaluations. Ask everyone for input. Ask your tutors, your other trainers, your staff. In our last session, we're going to talk a little bit more about feedback and how you can use your trainers as part of your evaluation team. We're going to look at that a little bit more in depth in session 3. But most programs ask tutors to produce some sort of a monthly activity report of their tutoring sessions with their learners. So this is definitely a great way to see what techniques are being used, okay? So if we as trainers pay attention to those tutor activity reports, you know, we'll actually see if they're using those strategies, what materials they're using. Another idea is to set up some kind of an interview or a focus group. If you do this, just be sure to create a safe environment that encourages honest and open input. You know, be sure to say that you are discussing evaluating a training and not an individual. I love to work with colleagues to gather feedback about how we can collectively improve our training workshops. I know one thing, because of my position, I have the opportunity many times to speak to different groups, and a lot of times I'll speak with higher administrators. So I really have a nice mix of who I speak to or who I present with. And I will often ask, you know, how did that sound? Did I make sense? And they'll often be surprised because many times the administrators don't even want to go there. They don't want to know the feedback themselves, but I do. Because I can't improve if I'm not finding out, you know, what I need to improve upon. Okay, question number 4. Are learners able to learn better because of what the tutors are doing? So just so you know, Kirkpatrick, the gentleman that we talked about earlier today, question 3 and question 4 are the most difficult to assess in any kind of an evaluation. And 4 definitely tends to be the least measured element in adult learning because it is hard to figure out. It's hard to figure out. It definitely is. So allow time for improvements to take place. Continuous evaluate. I like this one. Trainers can take some credit. Yay, trainers. Yay, trainers. Go trainers. And consider using tutors as part of an evaluation team. And be open to make changes. These are some slightly easier ways that you can tell if your trainings are having an impact. And these are some tangibles. Program statistics can sometimes provide tangibles to how we evaluate our trainings. So they can give insight if learning has improved. So we can count things like the number of the learner goals that have been met. We can look at learner retention and also learner satisfaction. You know, if you're hearing a lot of positive things from the learners, or you're getting less dropout or stop-out rates from learners. Learner attendance. You know, is it a worthwhile investment of the learner's time that they're willing to make that time to attend the classes or the tutoring sessions? Are you getting learner referrals? And volunteer retention. Volunteer tutors that are given the tools and are mentored are more likely to stick around. It's a fact. It's a best practice that if they feel supported, if they feel that they've been given the tools in their toolbox, they are definitely going to feel that they can do the job. They'll have that self-efficacy. They can do this. They've got this. And they will be an invaluable tutor in your literacy program. At one point, I haven't done it recently, but if you have gone online to read our best practice on the Florida Literacy Coalition's website, they have some best practices. And in 2010, the Citrus County Library System did receive the best practice for the tutor training workshops. If you go in and you read the statistics in there, at one point we used to very diligently figure out what percent of tutors never tutored. So if a tutor, a prospective or potential tutor, took a workshop with us and then did not tutor, we would actually keep those statistics to try and figure out why. What was it why the tutor did not actually go through with the tutoring? And we used to have a very high rate on that. But we did have, like I said, everybody knows that April was not in that position. We had nobody in that position for 8-9 months. So those are the things that April and I are working to get back to. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some evaluation do's and don'ts. Well, if it's not broken, don't fix it. You know, keep your evaluation tools simple. Don't gather information if you're not going to use it. Evaluate continuously over time and celebrate success. So if your tool is working, you know, if it's a survey, if it's a checklist of tasks, some people may even use rubrics. And you can, there is like a rubric.com website you can even go to and create rubrics. You know, don't fix it. If we as trainers get input from tutors and we just file it away, we're not doing our job. And you don't have to evaluate and change everything all at once. Make small changes here and there for improvements. Celebrate your successes, stay in high energy mode, and know that you are doing the best job that you possibly can. So some of the resources that we use today for this PowerPoint, I just want to briefly mention the top one listed there by the Florida Literacy Coalition. It's actually a very nice booklet, and it's called A Training and Development Guide for Volunteers, and it came from a literacy program in Colorado. And if you click on that link, you can actually download it and save it, save the PDF. And on page 91 of this little booklet, it talks about using evaluation as a tool for continuous improvement. And I really liked how this booklet from the Florida Literacy Coalition's website, I liked how it mentioned the peer review. And by peer review, that is asking another literacy program to conduct an evaluation of your literacy program. I thought that was a really cool concept in here. It also talks about conducting exit interviews of learners and tutors. And on page 99 in this little booklet, there's a tutor self-evaluation checklist, which I thought was kind of a great idea too. Now, we actually have a tutor self-evaluation checklist in Citrus Libraries, and we have not been using it diligently lately. But if it's something that you'd like to see, it's another resource that I could share. But I wanted to point out, you might get some great information from this little booklet from the Florida Literacy Coalition's website. If you liked the 4 questions and the 4-level train evaluation model, and you want to read more about Donald Kirkpatrick and his model, there's the website, mindtools.com. Great article on there. I did send you the Pro Literacy in the email. It was an evaluation in the email. And then some of you may know about SurveyMonkey, that it's an online survey tool. They do have a free option. Of course, they have a paid subscription too, but you can do some limited things for free. And you could actually have your training participants do the online survey if you'd like to. It's something you'd have to create. I just, again, would recommend that maybe you don't have them do it. I would actually set up laptops or have the computers in the room if you're going to do that. Since we had some difficulty today with our getting the link out, and Nicole and I apologize for that, it made me self-reflect as a trainer and made me think about another person who's known for his research on evaluation. And I don't have him in my PowerPoint, but I'm happy to share more information with you. His name is Donald Schön, and it's spelled like S-C-H-O-N, okay? And what I really, really like about him is that he proposes two types of reflection, and that trainers should think about this when doing any kind of a training. He talks about reflection on action, which is the after the training event. So it's kind of like after the event is over, after the training is over, you review, you describe, you analyze, and you evaluate how it went, okay? But then the one that I really, really like is the reflection in action. And that's what it's actually called, reflection in action. And that's when trainers kind of examine what's going on at the given moment in the classroom or during the training session, and they may change their module or their training based on what's actually happening in the classroom at that given time. The trainer makes snap decisions and thinks on his or her feet. And it kind of made me think about mentioning that particular Donald Schön and his model, because in the classroom, one of his principles is that you have to accept that bad things are going to happen in the classroom, and that you need to be able to stay calm when conflict arises in the classroom. And most importantly, you have to be reflection in action and act in a composed but assertive manner when dealing with any kind of a training incident. So I thought I'm going to mention that tonight to you, how it got me reflective in action thinking. So I did email out the presentation assignment again, and I do have, let's see, some people have told me what they plan to do for their topic. If you haven't told me and you want to type it in the chat box, you can at this given point. Or if you want to email me, that's fine too. And we'll go over any kind of questions that you have, anything about tonight's session. We can discuss the assignment. So what questions do you have? Let's see what questions there are.
Susan, did you want me to read off some of the some questions?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay, so we have a question here. Do you have samples of the other types of later evaluations in addition to eval surveys that are completed at the end of the training session?
Well, a lot of the later evaluations are going to be more of an observation type. Like we talked about, if your program collects some kind of a program worksheet from a tutor, like what is the tutor actually working on with the learner, a lot of times you'll see if they're actually using the language experience approach, or if they're using, you know, some kind of a strategy or tool that you've taught them. If they're using realia, if they're using, and realia is just a fancy word for those common everyday items that we can use in the classroom, such as a calendar or a menu, or you know, it could be the, you know, coins. It could be a catalog. So anytime that they're using everyday materials or realia, if you're seeing that they're using that and you've taught the subject of using realia in your workshop, then you can pretty much gauge that, you know, that's an observational type of, they're implementing what you've taught. So especially like the question 3 and question 4 that Kirkpatrick comes up with, those are the most difficult ways to evaluate. You're really going to be looking at what your tutors are actually doing in the classroom. Does that answer the question?
Okay, I think that's it. There's a comment here from Hugh. I have begun to survey those tutors who've been through our training 3 months ago, a year ago, and those who have left our service, to see if our training really prepared them for the experience.
Oh, that's great. That is a great idea, Hugh. So are you, what has Hugh found? Have you actually learned something from it? I think that's a great idea.
He says mostly positive.
That's great, Hugh.
We also have a question here from Brooksy. Did you record this session? I wasn't able to log in until about after 6. And I can answer that. Yes, we did record it, and I can send it to everyone after the session.
Thank you, Nicole. That's great.
No problem. And that's all the questions we have for now.
Okay. I will speak from experience. At one time, we tried the just-in-time training, and some of you may be aware of the just-in-time training concept, where we didn't have formal, you know, 2-day tutor training session where we just met more casually one-on-one with an individual tutor, prospective tutor. And for us, especially when it was for a one-on-one tutor, it didn't work. But I've known other programs that has worked. So just bringing that open for discussion. How is everybody feeling about the participant presentation assignment? So everybody understands at session 3, there'll be a 10-minute presentation that you could use at a tutor training workshop. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to give and receive feedback, and take a look at the ProLiteracy observation tool a little bit. We'll take a look at that. And we won't actually be filling one of those out on everybody, but we'll take a little bit more in-depth look at the tool. And April will share some information with you about the ProLiteracy certification, the actual training that she's taking right now, because she's right in the middle of it, and she's it's been about 10 years since I've done it. So although I do renew every 4 years. So how's everybody feeling about the presentation assignment? Any questions about that specifically?
So far we have a comment, nervous.
Aw. We are all in the same boat. We are all in the same boat. Hey, talk about nervous. Think about my presentation, and I have to talk to all of you extremely bright, brilliant trainers.
We do have a question here. I know you gave some ideas for topics. Can you give a few more ideas?
Sure. And it does not have to be something that you'd necessarily do for a new tutor training. Okay, so some of the ones on here were reading comprehension, graphic organizers, sight words, phonemic awareness, you know, being able to attach a sound to a symbol. Could be fluency, anything with writing, root words or prefixes, suffixes. It could be a conversation technique or role model or a dialogue. Grammar rules or grammar exercise. Could be vocabulary drills, spelling rules, idioms. You could do really fun thing on idioms, especially I know there's quite a few English language instructors and trainers in our group. Lesson plans. I think I mentioned to you some of my favorite topics are like the psychology of learning, how to encode and retrieve. Once you've learned something, how do you actually retrieve it? Memorization techniques. I love chunking. I love all those psychology type things. It doesn't have to be specifically for a new tutor training. It could be, let's say you work a lot with pre-GED or GED. It could be numeracy or math related. It could be something fun for a tutor enrichment workshop, like the psychology thing. So, does that help a little bit?
Okay, I have another question here. Are we supposed to send our topic ahead of time?
Okay, that all depends if, as a group, we would like to share the information. I think it would be pretty awesome if everybody chose a slightly different topic and we shared the information and we all walked out of there with presentations that we could possibly change or adapt and use. I think I mentioned to you when I took the Train the Trainer first about 10 years ago, there were 4 colleagues and myself that took it together. And we still use some of those training modules today. We've just adapted it. Reading comprehension was one of our original Train the Tutor Trainer modules. Graphic organizers was one of our original Train the Tutor Trainer assignment projects. So if we want to not all be doing the same topic and you want to share with me the topic that you're doing, I can send out the list and let everybody know before the next session. I can certainly send that out as soon as possible. So it all depends how much we want to actually get out of it. Do you want to walk away with a flash drive of possible presentations that you could change or adapt or use?
All right, we have another question here. Does our presentation have to be an original idea to the topic, or can we research others' ideas and utilize them?
Yeah, I would say you can research other ideas and utilize them. I mean, I probably wouldn't copy something word for word, but anytime you change the format of something and change the content, then it would be your own.
Okay, and I think that's all we have for now. That's all the questions.
Okay, so does anybody know what their topic is tonight and they want to tell me? I know Carla has mentioned to me sight words. If you happen to know your topic and you want to go ahead and type it in the chat box, you can. If you need to think about it, that's okay too.
While we're waiting for people to chime in there, I do want to mention something about the hotel real quickly. I'm going to put the phone number for the hotel reservation in the chat box here, and I'm going to kind of send it to all of you right now. But if you want to go ahead and write it down, it's 1-800-634-4774. If you have not yet made a reservation, you will be using a specific code, which I will put in the chat box as well.
Oh, and I actually did have a slide on that. Let me just go back out for a minute. My slides have frozen again.
Uh-oh.
Oh, there we go. Let's see.
Okay, so I went ahead and sent it to all of you via the chat box. So if you could turn your attention there, if you want to copy and paste it or write it down, I can also send it via email. It's 1-800-634-4774. And the code is going to be 0618 train T. So 0618 train T. That's the code that the hotel gave us. And we will be providing lunch, of course.
And that is Saturday, June 9th at the Grand Orlando Resort and Celebration at 9:30.
All right, Susan, so we do have some answers for your question. Would you like me to go ahead and read them off?
Sure, thank you.
Okay. So we have one, roots, prefixes, and suffixes. That's one topic. Another one, I'll probably do mine on language response, the language response teaching idea.
Okay.
Okay, the next one is writing strategies, specifically pre-writing.
Okay.
And that's all for topics. We do have a question. Would you like me to read that off, or do you want to?
Sure.
Okay. Is Saturday the best day to do a tutor training or evenings?
I think that really depends on your demographics. I can speak for our county. It literally has been in our newspaper that we have one of the oldest population in Citrus County. And many of our tutors are older retired individuals that do not want to drive at night. So I really think that depends on your demographics. You have to know who are the actual participants that are coming. We even find it difficult to get people to tutor sometimes at night because they don't want to drive at night. And it was funny because one of the sessions, and I know Nicole was in on that session, and some of you were actually in on that session. It was the literacy director meeting at the Florida Literacy Coalition, Greg and Nicole. And that was one of the things that came up, was somebody said it's really difficult to get volunteer tutors to teach at night, because I know the corrections people were hoping that we could get more tutors to teach at night. So I think it really depends on your demographics. We tend to do, my favorite that works for us is sometimes we do Thursday and Friday, 2 days in a row. We've also done Friday and Monday. And we always make the joke, oh, and look, they came back for more training. But with our demographics, the Saturday and the evening didn't work for us. But others, it may work for others, depending on their demographics. Does anybody else have a comment about best days, times, or anything about?
So we have a question here. Any ideas for making that up with a few others that can't make it?
Oh, for session 3?
It's not specified.
Okay. I can certainly email or send out anything and even mentor anybody who can't come to session 3. It's not our preferred thing because I know, I do know Nicole and the Florida Literacy Coalition give out certificates to people who attend all 3 of the sessions. But I can certainly help you at any given point in time with pro-literacy, or you know, if you want to email me a presentation and get some input, you know, I'm open to that. I can certainly share any of the materials with you for session 3, because that's what we're all about. We're here to support one another as trainers.
I think that's it for questions.
Okay. Okay. Well, Nicole, you think there's no more questions?
Nobody's been, not so far. Nobody's been asking questions.
Okay.
Right now, for the time being. For those of you asking questions that are more having to do with session 3, I can you can email me personally if you don't think you're going to be able to make it, or Susan, of course.
Yep. And I will. I'll probably send out some emails before then too, just to connect with everybody. And I was actually going to send up a list of some of the questions that you had that we should address maybe in session 3 as well.
Let's see. Yep, I think we're done on questions.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for attending tonight, and you are doing awesome work, and appreciate getting to know each and every one of you.
And again, please take down the number and the code if you haven't done so already. I will also, I can also email that around to everyone. So the training will include lunch as well.
Sounds great, Nicole. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, I guess we'll call it an evening. And I want to thank you all again for attending, and feel free to call me or email me with any questions about the assignment, or if there's anything else that you really feel like we should make sure that we discuss in session 3, I will do my best to make sure that we do that.
Great, thank you all for joining, and we'll see you on June 9th.
Sounds great. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
See you June 9th. Bye.